The Drums of War, Chapter 41, 1 of 3, Resolve. On a Saw-Core transport shuttle descending from the Forge world Naxuru, Lieutenant Emily Sullivan controlled the breathing. The shuttle jostled and shook her and her team as it hit the planet's upper atmosphere, and she swallowed her nerves. This was her first time leading this team, but luckily 3 out of her 4 subordinates knew and liked her. She initially thought that they'd give her a little trouble, since they had all had seniority over her. But the closest they came to that was the payment of a wager. Apparently, there had been a pool among Dr. Sarah Patel, Specialist Alexei Petrov, and MedTech Juan Hernandez over when she accepted her promotion. Emily thought Alexei's victory dance had been a bit much. The shuttle shook a little more, and Emily reminded herself that she wouldn't be making different kinds of calls, just ones with more at stake. "Careful, don't cut the artery of a set of power armor again," Dr. Patel was saying. "Shut up! It's not my fault they both are red," Alexei bristled. Someone whose commercial English is already accentuated in Hispanic tones, imitating Alexei's Slavic tones, was grating, but that didn't stop Juan. "Blood! Blood! Oh God! I'm killing him!" "Quiet! Anybody would be making that mistake," Alexei grumbled. "Besides, it's sprayed in faceplate. It's sprayed in the faceplate. I could not see that no more was pumping." "Hydraulic fluid is not blood," Dr. Patel said in a mocking cadence of a lecturer. "I know from my extensive studies at med school, since I'm a doctor and not an engineer." "I'm never living this down. It was 3 planets ago." "It was funny," Juan said through wheezing laughter. "I could bringing up what was on your head and our last maggots are totally different," Juan objected strenuously. "They're all wiggly and gross." "Maggots cannot hurt you," Dr. Patel began in the same mocking cadence, but was interrupted when Juan chucked a roll of gauze at her. It bounced off her helmet, and she laughed. "Come, Proby, be telling us if you find maggots falling atop you because you shifted the wrong rubble, because you are not listening to the engineer. Will you be squealing like a little girl? Or are you an engineer who can't tell the difference between blood and hydraulic fluid?" "Guys, leave the Proby alone," Dr. Patel said with a wolfish grin. "He's probably a puker." The 3 medtechs looked at the new guy with a considering, critical eye, and Juan declared, "I bet 5 creds he'll hurl in the first hour." "No, it's tough, Proby. I say he will last until end of shift." "You're both wrong. He'll last 10 minutes, Dr. Patel said, and began once again speaking in a mocking tone. "I know this because of my Another roll of gauze bounced off her faceplate. MedTech Jamal Watkins took the betting stoically, that is, he pretended that it wasn't happening at all. Emily, however, found her mind dwelling on 2 things. The first, the time that she had spent on the Jesus Garcia's firing range with a sight-on. Sure, she'd qualified with it during training, but she'd never had to fire it before. Not once. Not even when she found Exarch warriors barricaded in decidedly odd locations on the clans of Ultra worlds, after the army had finished evicting the invaders. Those were occupied friendly xenoplanets, though. Naxuru was one of their worlds, hostile down to the last inch. So Emily had visited the range to make sure that she remembered how to use a gun. She did. The second thing her mind dwelt on was the weight of the compact killing machine dragging at her hip where it was magnetically locked to her power armor. The thing weighed at least 1.5 tons over 0.8 kilos, the scale claimed. "Listen up," Emily said, her clear voice cutting through the chatter. "We're not operating in friendly or even contested territory. Every civilian we rescue or threat is the potential to become hostile. Be ready, people. The army isn't quite done down there, but the R&I has some MIAs already, and the army's medtechs would love any help they can get. We're starting this rotation with looking for those MIAs. You should have their names and last known locations of the troopers in our area of operations loaded into your HUDs. And remember, the faster we get to those boys, the more likely they are to be alive. Still, triage civilians as you go, provide first aid and stabilization where you can. Watch your feet and your back. Structure collapses is going to be deadlier to us than enemies. Dr. Patel, take the Proby. Alexei is with me. Juan up the middle. Let's stay within at least 2 minutes sprint of one another. Questions?" "Any reason you're making me babysit?" Dr. Patel asked flippantly. Emily gave her friend a steady look and told her, "Because Mr. Watkins was a para from downtown on Mars before he signed up with the SAR Corps, And if you're too good a doctor to find a use for that kind of experience, then you should go back to boot camp." The shuttle shuddered, and the loading ramp lowered before anyone could say anything more. So Emily said, "Okay, people, it's go time." In orbit above the depot and transit world of Azad, Corporal Peter George focused on his breathing. There had never been an instance of a Republican stealth drop being detected. There was always a first time, and Corporal George was aware that this could be it. The Nathan Hale was their fine transport, but her armaments, shields, and armor were almost perfunctory in their minimal nature. This deep in enemy territory, if she was detected, the only way she would stay sailing is to flee, and even that would be a chancy thing. However, there was nothing Corporal George could do about that, strapped into his stealth drop pod as he was, so he focused on his breathing to keep from panicking in the dark confines in which he was trapped. Thump, bump. Corporal George had already had that other drop troopers chatter in the tube, and even during the drop, but stray signals were just another thing the enemy could pick up on. Hell, even the Nathan Hale was running on minimum power and probably imitating orbital debris in preparation for firing the RNI ADR DRS troopers, like so many cartridges from a rifle. A civvy wouldn't believe a skipper could be a sniper with a ship, but that's because civvies know almost nothing about how stealth operations are conducted. It's not as cinematic as a company like the Lost Boys dropping amidst fire and fury. Thump, bump. That was Lieutenant Hammond and Gunny, officer and staff first, then squad NCOs, then team leaders, namely him, then troopers. It didn't matter where or what kind of operation. The RNI always puts the mission leader on the dirt, or in the enemy hull, as it happens, first. There was something deeply reassuring about that to Corporal George, even if he could never quite understand what exactly that was. Thump bump, thump bump, thump bump. There went the three sergeants, just a little more time waiting in the tube, according to plan, and he'd be away, followed by all the other unfortunate men obliged to lead. He didn't think his team would give him trouble. Sure, Corporal George was a transfer from another platoon, but RNI was RNI. They knew that when the Republic offers duty to you, you don't turn her down. Besides, they'd gotten plastered together and had all sworn if they ever found the scrawny midshipman again, they'd be creative with the glue. There was a clang and a tremendous boom, and Corporal George was away and doing his own imitation of debris in a decaying orbit. Not that he had to touch the controls of his pod to do it. No. The trajectory from launch was good, and the only thing for him to do was to wait to hit the upper atmosphere. It wouldn't take much longer for the rest of the pods to be away, which meant that Nathan Hale had accomplished her mission flawlessly, which meant all of her hands were in significantly less danger than they were mere hours ago. Corporal George's pod began to rattle as its ablative layers began to burn to both slow its descent and convince any scanning equipment that might happen to be looking his way at just the wrong time that he was just another piece of debris that would burn up on entry. Nothing to worry about, enough to shoot at. He hated this part. It made him feel like his teeth were going to rattle out of his skull. No matter how many drops he did, he never got used to it. The discomfort didn't stop him from noticing Lieutenant Hammond's indicator light go green, quickly followed by Gunny's. They'd immediately test comms security, so by the time the squad leaders hit the ground, communication should be possible. Or if not, steps to make it possible would be in motion. Speaking of, 3 more lights came on in the darkness of the pod when the rattling suddenly died out. The display suddenly left to life. His hands flew to the controls, and he glanced at the scanner detection indicator. Nothing. He must be below the scanning floor. He cycled on the gravity generators and began to steer and slow his descent so that he would land in the LZ alive and not become a charred smear of carbon across the twisted warren of metal and concrete that made up the surface of this planet. He brushed the tops of the broadcasting and receiving equipment lining the peaks of the clustered towers before he shot like a bullet into a crooked canyon between them. His heart pounded in his throat. Sweat dripped down the back of his neck. His eyes tried to drink in the deserted and crumbling structures as they flashed by, but his hands were steady on the controls. Then he was moving at saner speeds through one of the many abandoned areas of this world, and set down in the skeletal remains of what might once been a sports arena, or maybe a massive theater. Blade leader down and checking comms, Corporal George said, as he started disassembling the pod. Comms good, Blade leader, Sergeant Daniel Reyes confirmed. Hilt leader down, checking comms, came Corporal Sam Donovan's voice, quickly followed by Sergeant Reyes' confirmation. Scabbard leader down and checking comms, came Corporal Ian McGregor's lifting chimes, which was again quickly followed by confirmation. Check on your guys, team leaders. Keep the chatter to a minimum. Comms are secure, but that doesn't mean that we give them a chance to break in if we don't have to. Aye, sir, all three said immediately. Just then, Corporal George heard Blade 1 down and checking comms from Lance Corporal Ethan Carter. Comms good, Blade 1, Corporal George confirmed, as he began cross-referencing what he could see with orbital photos and the area of activity for a good area to set up camp. Blade 2 down and checking comms, PFC Lucas Bennett and Corporal George confirmed. Finally, PFC Oliver Finch rasped, Blade 3 down and checking comms. Comms good, Blade 3, Corporal George confirmed, before switching to NCO channel. Team Blade all present and accounted for, proceeding to locate camps and preliminary observations. Roger that, Blade leader, Sergeant Reyes said over the comms. Corporal George squared away in his team and started looking for access points to the forgotten Undercity. He had work to do. End of chapter.